times a week after dinner, the matrons would assist the youngest boys with the nightly wash. 3 times a week? You only washing the little boys 3 times a week? So it's 4 times a week they going to bed dirty? Ugh, you know how dirty little boys are? Well, hello there, love bugs. Hello there, Bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share to Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com for these JT RZA shades. We have them in black and brown and this black turban. And if you are not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube, and for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's talk about you paying big club members, you already know. But for the others of yous, bam! Prince Harry's spare. Towards the end of the service came Uncle Charles, who used his allotted time to blast everyone, family, nation, press, for stalking Mommy to her death. You could feel the Abbey, the nation outside, recoil from the blow. Truth hurts. Then 8 Welsh guards moved forward, hoisting the enormous lead-lined coffin, which was now draped in the royal standard, an extraordinary break with protocol. They'd also yielded to pressure and lowered the flag to half-mast. The royal standard was always reserved for members of the royal family, which I'd been told Mommy wasn't anymore. You know, like how the Jacksons, remember we had read the Jacksons? And once you leave them gates over there at the compound, Havenhurst, and you think you too good for the Jacksons, or you decide not to stay there in the Jackson household and take the bullshit that goes along with being a Jackson, baby, you out. And you do not nor get none of the royalties of being a Jackson. Goodbye, Dee Dee. Goodbye, Peggy. Goodbye. Bye. You better not take your kids with you, because if you take your children, they damn sure won't get no child support. Then everyone moved on. The family went back to work. And I went back to school, same as I did after every summer holiday. September 15th, 1997, I turned 13. By long-standing Ludgrove tradition, there would be a cake, sorbet, and I was allowed to choose 2 flavors. I chose blackcurrant and mango. Ugh, what is blackcurrant like? Is blackcurrant like black licorice? Ugh, that sounds disgusting. Despite its 2 male headmasters, Mr. Gerald and Mr. Marston, both legends, Ludgrove was largely run by women. We called them the matrons. Whatever tenderness we got day to day came from them. The matrons hugged us, kissed us, bandaged our injuries, wiped our tears. All except mine, that is. After the one graveside outburst, I'd not cried again. They fancied themselves our surrogates, mums away from mums. They'd always chirp, which had always been odd, but now was especially confusing because of Mummy's disappearance, and also because the matrons were now really hot. Okay, so he 13. All right, we can't be mad at the prince for having, understandings of what he is supposed to do with his nature. I had a crush on Miss Roberts. I felt certain I'd marry her one day. I also recalled 2 Miss Lynns, Miss Lynn Major and Miss Lynn Minor. They were sisters. I was deeply smitten with the latter. I reckoned I'd marry her too. 3 times a week after dinner, the matrons would assist the youngest boys with the nightly wash. Pause. Okay, this right here is very, I don't know, uncomfortable for me because I'm like, this got to be criminal. I know it's criminal here. Why ain't it criminal there? All I could think of when he was breaking this part down was the scene in Coming to America when Eddie Murphy's sitting in the tub, the young Eddie Murphy sitting in the tub, the great big tub, and he got all these beautiful African ladies surrounding him, and the one lady come up out of the water and say, the royal penis is clean. And I'm like saying to myself, when did they stop washing these little boys? Because he 13. 13 is too old to be getting your balls cleaned by some lady. 3 times a week after dinner, the matrons would assist the youngest boys with the nightly wash. 3 times a week? You only washing the little boys 3 times a week? So it's 4 times a week they going to bed dirty? Ugh, you know how dirty little boys are? Gross. I can still see the long row of white baths, each with a boy reclining like a little pharaoh, waiting his personalized hair washing. You know why? Because them little mother hunchies had lice. So we know what none of them little boys leaning back in that bathtub getting a luxurious shampoo black. At least I don't think so. That's not our problem. Now we may get the lice down there, but not in our head. Okay, sorry, white folks, it's just the truth of the matter. Outbreaks were common. Nearly every week, another boy would come down with a fierce case. We'd all point and laugh. That shit ain't funny. Lice is never funny. As a 13-year-old, I graduated from matron bathing assistants. So that means that them ladies was bathing them boys' balls all the way up till they was 12. That's criminal. Girl. But I still depended on their nightly tuck-ins, still treasured their morning greetings. They were the first faces we saw every day. They swept into our rooms, threw open our curtains, morning boys. Bleary, I'd gaze up into a beautiful visage framed by a halo of sun. Could that be? It never was. Poor Harry. The matter I dealt with the most was Pat. Unlike the other matrons, Miss Pat was not hot. Pat was cold. Pat was small, mousy, frazzled, and her hair fell greasily into her always tired eyes. What he found the most entertaining about Miss Pat, that although she was a prude, and she would always catch his ass with one of his friends screwing around, doing something dumb, he could always make her laugh, and he enjoyed that. A month later, it was half term. I was going home at last. Wait, no, I wasn't. Paul apparently didn't want me to spend the break wandering aimlessly around St. James Palace, where he'd been mostly living since his breakup with Mommy, and where Willie and I had lived whenever it was our allotted time with Pa. He feared what I might get up to in that big palace all by myself. He feared I might glimpse a newspaper, overhear a radio. More, he feared I might be photographed through an open window or while playing with my toy soldiers in the gardens. The nation was in a state of hysterical grief. But the press's hysteria had veered into psychosis. Worst of all, Willie wouldn't be at home to watch over me. He was at Elton. So Paul announced that he'd be taking me with him on a planned work trip to South Africa. South Africa, Paul? Really? Yes, darling boy. Johannesburg. The truth was, Paul's staff hoped a photo of him standing alongside the world's most revered political leader and the world's most popular female musical act would earn him some positive headlines, which he sorely needed. Since Mommy's disappearance, he'd been savaged. People blamed him for the divorce and thus for all that followed. His approval rating around the world was single digits. In Fiji, to pick just one example, a national holiday in his honor had been rescinded. Whatever the official reason for the trip, I didn't care. I was just glad to be going along. This was in reality a work trip for Paul and for me. The Spice Girls concert represented my first public appearance since the funeral, and I knew through intuition through bits of overhead conversations that the public's curiosity about my welfare was running high. I didn't want to let them down, but I also wanted them all to go away. I remember stepping onto the red carpet, screwing a smile onto my face, suddenly wishing I was in my bed at St. James Palace. Beside me was Baby Spice, wearing white plastic shoes with chunky 12-inch platform heels. I fixated on those heels while she fixated on my cheeks. She kept pinching them. So chubby, so cute. Hold on, Princey Pooh. That mother hunchy paprika spice is plotting on that royal pickle. You hear me? She pinching them cheeks going, you just wait till you turn 18, fire crotch. I'm going to have you to myself, fire crotch. I'm telling you, that paprika, oh, she see you, Princey Pooh. You just too young to understand, Prince. Then Posh Spice surged forward and clutched my hand. Farther down the line, I spied Ginger Spice, the only Spice with whom I felt any connection. A fellow Ginger, child. I'm telling you, the whole Spice rack is plotting on you, baby. She and the other Spices were cooing at me, saying things I didn't understand while bantering with the journalists who were shouting at me. Harry over here, Harry. How are you doing? Questions that weren't questions. Questions that were traps. Questions that were flung at my head like cleavers. The journalists didn't give a toss how I was doing. They were trying to get me to say something messy or newsy. I gazed into their flashes, bared my teeth, and said nothing. If I wasn't intimidated by the flashes, the Spice Girls were intoxicated. Yes, 1,000 times yes. That was their attitude every time another flash went off. Fine by me. The more out front they were, the more I could fade into the woodwork. So now, young Prince is back in school. Late at night, after lights out, some of us would sneak out, go roaming up and down the corridors. A strict violation of the rules, but I was lonely and homesick, probably anxious and depressed, and I couldn't abide being locked into my dormitory. If I wasn't roaming the corridors, I was roaming the school grounds, usually with my best mate, Henners. Like me, Henners was officially a Henry, but I always called him Henners, and he called me Has. Skinny with no muscles and hair that stood up in permanent surrender, Henners was all heart. Whenever he smiled, people melted. He was the only boy who mentioned Mommy to me after she disappeared. But that winning smile, that tender nature, made you forget that Henners could be quite naughty. Okay, that's their word for bad boy. We know that Prince Harry is a bad boy. My mother legendarily said there were 3 people in her marriage, but her math was way off. She left Willie and me out of the equation. We didn't understand what was going on with her and Paul, but we figured it out. We sensed the presence of the other woman because we suffered the downstream effects. Willie long harbored suspicions about the other woman, which confused him, tormented him, and when those suspicions were confirmed, he felt tremendous guilt for having done nothing, said nothing soon. I was too young, I think, to have suspicions, but I couldn't help but feel the lack of stability, the lack of warmth and love in our house. Now, with Mommy missing, the math swung hard in Paul's favor. He was free to see the other woman openly as often as he liked. I hated when a hoe win, but seeing wasn't sufficient. Paul wanted to be public about it. He wanted to be above board. And the first step towards that aim was to bring the boys into the fold. Willie went first. He bumped into the other woman once at the palace, but now he was formally summoned from Eton for a high-stakes private meeting at Highgrove, I think. Over tea, I believe. It went well. I gathered from Willie later Though he didn't go into details, he merely gave me the impression that the other woman, Camilla, had made an effort which he appreciated, and that was all he cared to say. My turn came next. I told myself, no big deal, just like getting an injection. Close your eyes, over before you know it. I have a dim recollection of Camilla being just as calm or bored as me. Neither of us much fretted about the other's opinion. She wasn't my mother, and I wasn't her biggest hurdle. In other words, I wasn't the heir. This bit with me was merely a formality. We thought he should be happy. Yes, Camilla had played a pivotal role in the unraveling of our parents' marriage, and yes, that meant she'd play a role in our mother's disappearance. But we understood that she'd been trapped, like everyone else, in the riptide of events. We didn't blame her, and in fact, we'd gladly forgive her if she could make Paul happy. We recognized the vacant looks, the empty sighs, the frustrations always visible on his face. We couldn't be absolutely sure because Paul didn't talk about his feelings, but we'd pieced together through the years a fairly accurate portrait of him based on little things he'd let slip. This part right here knocked me out, okay? So anyway, Prince Harry told a story about how Prince Charles was sent away to a school to help him with his flinchiness. Now here in Maryland, okay, I'm not in Maryland, you know I'm in Georgia, but in Maryland we got this thing called the Young Marines. It either gives discipline to young men who are out of pocket, okay, or it gives strength to those young men that are a bit flinchy, okay, if you know what I mean by flinchy. I don't even know if that's in the dictionary, but you know, shaky, bad nerves. Child, they sent him away to this school, child, so that he can toughen up. Child, they got there and they bullied the little boy even more. I want to see how Prince Charles rules with this little piece of information, because basically Prince Harry let us know that our father is a bit flinchy. Okay, if a problem come up, he might push that button. Okay, because he a bit scary. Okay, that's what flinchy mean. He a little scary. He's scared. The only thing we asked in return was he not marry her. I hate when a hoe win. The only thing we asked in return was that he not marry her. You don't need to remarry, we pleaded. A wedding would cause controversy. It would incite the press. It would make the whole country, the whole world talk about Mummy, compare Mummy and Camilla, and nobody wanted that, least of all Camilla. If she didn't want it, then why the hell did she butt in? What I want to know, how in the hell did, what's his name, Prince Charles woo her? How you let flinchy Prince Charles woo you into thinking it's okay to sleep with him while he married to Princess Diana? How the hell that happened? We support you, we said. We endorse Camilla, we said. Just please don't marry her. Just be together, Paul. He didn't answer, but she answered straight away. Shortly after our private summits with her, she began to play the long game with a campaign aimed at marriage and eventually the crown. I hate it when hoes win.